What happened to the popular young gaming YouTuber Etika? He had a promising career as a popular YouTuber with over 1.3 million subscribers combined over multiple channels. He went missing at the young age of 29 and would eventually be found under devastating circumstances. This is an interesting case study into the mind of a person on a steady mental decline, and learning of the causes that led to his ultimate demise is sure to teach us all useful lessons that could equip us to handle our own stresses or those of our close acquaintances. Let's take a little dive into the sad case of Etika as we challenge ourselves to learn from his mistakes. If you're new to this channel, you are not alone, buddy, so am I. Everybody calls me Gypsie with an IE, and I am a true crime junkie just like you. On this channel, we strive to explore the mindset of people who commit horrific acts against others, the dark psychology that leads people to harm themselves or other people, and we try to learn how we can become more aware of the warning signs when we come across them in our own lives or in society in general. I hope that you will subscribe and stick around long enough to join our discussions in the comments and to build an intelligent, empathetic community of individuals who want to see society win. When we all contribute our positive energies and knowledge, we can then collectively benefit from the rewards. Today's case will be highlighting the life and the tragic end of Etika, a young American YouTuber who made a name for himself as a reactor to video games and as an online streamer. But first, let's talk about his background. Like many YouTubers, Etika went by his pseudonym and was actually born Desmond Daniel Amofa on May 12, 1990 in Brooklyn, New York. He was the son of Sabrina Amofa and Owuraku Amofa, his father. Owuraku was a politician in Kebbi, the capital of the East Akim Municipal District of Southern Ghana, Africa. Because of his political career, Desmond considered his relationship with his father to be quite distant. According to reports, Desmond had siblings as well. His older brother Randy apparently died of an asthma attack in 2010 during a sandstorm in Ghana, which totally breaks my heart. That is like the most unfortunate thing I've ever heard of. And he had another brother who was I believe this was his half brother. His name was Cardinal Valerie, who eventually got into online video creation himself. A native of New York, Desmond Amofa lived in Brooklyn for his entire young life. During a live stream in 2018, Desmond said that he was a public school student at Shell Bank Junior High School for a year until his mother pulled him out because he kept getting into fights with the other kids. However, I'm personally not going to hold this against him, as I have myself experienced the violence and mayhem that is just the normal backdrop of urban inner city schools in Brooklyn and most of New York City school districts, even when I was a kid back in the late 90s. I can't imagine much would have changed by the time Desmond was attending school in the 2000s. He later enrolled at Urban Assembly School for Law and Justice, and this was a public high school which was themed on law and designed to prepare students for college in the field of law. He graduated this school in 2008, and he even went to the 10-year reunion later on. This is also very common for public schools in New York City to be themed based on specific areas of study. For example, at my middle school, Ditmas Junior High, we had 4 smaller schools which majored in different areas to accommodate the interests and aptitudes of the students, and it was all housed within the same building. These included science and math, law and justice, international, which pertained to foreign immigrant students still learning to acclimate to the American culture, along with my own focus area, which was performing and visual arts. In my section of the school, all the students took on a major study in stage performance, music, visual arts, along with our academic studies. Aside from the constant fights and bullying, of course, our classes were pretty fun and engaging, and because it was in our specific areas of interest, it was a lot easier to get into the actual schoolwork that we had to do because we thought that it was interesting. Before Desmond started his business gaming on YouTube, he was into modeling and rapping. I guess performing was just in his DNA. I can relate to that. He had already posted rap videos between 2007 and 2009 under his stage name Iceman. He even released a mixtape called Written in Ice in 2007. As for modeling, he started in his early 20s and only stopped in 2015 when he started losing his passion for that career path. Which of you guys remember that modeling social media website, Model Mayhem? OMG, whatever happened to that site? He did have an account there where he described himself as quite tall and that he was 6 feet 6 inches the last time he checked. So now, how does Desmond Amofa end up being known as Etika? He got the name from a 2003 video game called Sonic Battle, in which there was a cheat code that players would use, and the cheat was spelled like this, Ekita. I'm not sure exactly how that was pronounced, but he decided to switch around the letters, and that's how he came up with Etika, because he liked the sound of that much better. He also got the idea to wear his hair in this high top fade style, which is really old school Black American urban hip hop area style, very popular among Black males back in the day. He was inspired by a look that was featured in the Grand Theft Auto San Andreas game. Can we just give this dude some credit, because he totally pulled this look off. It takes a lot of confidence to not only grow out your hair to achieve this look, because the transition period is a whole nother matter, y'all, but also to rock this look with style. I see how he almost ended up becoming a professional model. Now, let's hop to 2012 when Desmond, who from this point on I'll be referring to by his public persona, Etika, created a new YouTube account to separate his content from his older stuff, which was when he was seriously pursuing a career as a rap musician. The purpose of this new channel was to publish his gaming content, along with his streaming sessions where he was doing reactions. He accumulated over 800,000 subs before his channel was terminated 6 years later. Soon after that, he created another channel called Etika FRFX, and only months after its inception, that channel grew to more than 300,000 subs. Let's not forget, his initial music channel also had over 130 subs at this point, so altogether he had over 1 million people subscribed to his account. That's definitely what the rest of us YouTubers would label as a success. I mean, I have like 3 or 4 channels myself, and collectively I have about 5 subscribers, so I'm catching up, baby. You better join the tribe while I'm still a nobody, because when I get to my first million, you already know I will be acting brand new. I don't know nobody. Side, thanks for subscribing. I really do appreciate the support, folks. Anywho's, what Etika covered on his channel included mostly Nintendo related content centering on gaming news, let's play videos, and reactions to gaming announcements. His reactions became ultra popular due to his high energy and outlandish style. Again, I can relate. You know, he was fun to watch. He would be falling out of his chair, throwing things around the room, reacting with shock when he was excited about something. He was a performer, and he definitely delivered. I heard Corey Kenshin describe him as a very energetic, outgoing, goofy guy, and that he was just flowing with energy and positive vibes. So I hope that gives you some kind of idea of the kind of vibe that Etika had. His most viewed reaction video was published in 2014, which covered information about a new fighting game that was not yet released, Super Smash Bros. 4. His reaction was even retweeted by the game's creator, Masahiro Sakurai. I hope I'm saying his name right. Later in 2018, he had a similarly viral reaction video to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and his channel showed no signs of slowing down in popularity. Rumor has it, Etika was making over $300,000 a year from stream donations alone. He did other stuff besides Nintendo-related content as well. He played Call of Duty, Overwatch, Doki Doki Literature Club, Final Fantasy VII, and Minecraft, and at times he streamed himself watching Japanese anime series like Attack on Titan, and would share his commentary with his audience. Overall, it seems Etika was a very likable personality. We're going to focus now on the last months of Etika's fast-paced life, around 2018 to 2019. By now, he has amassed a ton of fans, money, and a lifestyle that any adult would dream of before the age of 30. This is a monumental accomplishment that should not be glossed over. It takes tons of dedication and focus to grow your internet content brand as he did, organically, not by scamming people, so let's be sure to make a point of remarking on this achievement. However, we're all human and we make mistakes and we run into pitfalls even throughout an overall successful journey. There was an incident on October 23rd, 2018, when Twitter temporarily suspended Etika's account due to his usage of the word Nigga in a post. I cannot repeat this word here on YouTube, but it is a very complex word in our American lexicon for so many reasons. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Black American culture or the origins of the drama over this word, commonly referred to as the N-word, let me quickly bring you up to speed. The actual N-word, according to the collective of Black people in America, is spelled with an ending of ER, making the ending of the word have a hard sound. It will rhyme with the word trigger. This is the most derogatory version of this word that even black people tend not to use unless they're extremely boiling point enraged and motivated to really hurt somebody's feelings by calling them this word. Even then, the sting of the word is not felt as sharply when it's coming from a fellow black person. It's always the worst when used against a black person by a non-black person. And the root of all of this has to do with very bad racial relations that were harbored between whites and black people when slavery ended and racial discrimination was legal and rampant. Yes, you heard me right, legal and rampant in our land of the free. It is definitely hate speech, no questions about that. However, the word NIGGA, which was the version of the word that was used by Etika in his post, this word is treated very differently by the collective of black Americans. This version of the word does not end with ER like in the previous spelling. Instead, this version is spelled with a GA ending and it rhymes with villa. To most black Americans, this is not even the same word, because we use it in a completely different context and almost never use this word as a standalone derogatory term. The closest thing I can give you as an example of the context of this word is when women use the B word to address one another endearingly, like when my girlfriends and I say things like, "What, Amanda's coming to the party? That B is so funny." Even if I said that in front of Amanda, she probably wouldn't become angry and she wouldn't take my meaning in a negative way necessarily. I hope this helps put these terms in perspective for those of you who are a little confused. Now, the controversy occurs when people outside of the black race use this term, even the version that ends with an A. When black people say someone who isn't black has an N-word pass, this is the version of the word that we're referring to, not the ER version. Ever, never, nobody ever has a pass for that word outside of the black community. Even other black people can barely justify their reasons for calling another black person that particular version of this word. This is why a lot of people who are not black but grew up in the hood or in urban areas tend to have a pass and can get away with saying the acceptable version of this word only. They tend to only use that word in the same context that other black people are using it. So we don't have to worry about them stepping out of line and using it as a weapon against our community members. You'll see a lot of black folks who are not American born or raised here, mixed and biracial black people like myself, and even some Hispanic and a little handful of Asian Americans that are allowed a pass here and there in their own personal local communities where people know them at. They can use the NIGGA version of the word if they're very careful, and they can get away with it and no one's gonna call them a racist. So black people will use the clean version of the N-word to refer to literally anybody. And stop playing. Did you really tell your boss to F off? You're a bold ass N. We don't use this word to literally mean black person or anything negative. You can substitute that word with dude, for example, and the meaning is not going to change. Now, this doesn't mean that all black Americans use these terms. Many choose not to, simply because they don't want to add to the confusion, not to mention the generational connotations that affect people differently when they use or hear this word, regardless of which version. You know, sometimes older black people get triggered by anything that sounds like the N-word, so they just don't use these words. They choose not to do it. But you might still hear some substitutions for the words inadvertently used, like granny scolding a child and saying something like, "Yeah, Negroes don't listen, go to your rooms." You know what I'm saying. So in the case of Etika here, who was condemned by Twitter for using a culturally acceptable word, he responded by releasing a video of himself defending this word and his frequent usage of it. He mentioned that the word was adopted by the black community from a tool of hatred into a form of love, and he stated that it was wrong to treat the word like a racial slur. In his defense video, he talked about famous rappers who use this word all the time in their lyrics, and I gotta agree with him on this one. If you don't stand up for your own culture, well, who will? And we can't bridge gaps and educate one another if we don't discuss these things with each other. I think he handled this the right way. Okay, but 2 days after this occurrence, Etika decided to upload inappropriate sexually explicit content on his new channel called EW Network, which is obviously a violation of YouTube's million policies. And this is a pretty black and white issue. So this is how his channel ends up being terminated in 2018, as we mentioned earlier. Then later the same year, he was also banned for using the F word in a stream. Not the F word that you're thinking, but the F word that is a derogatory term used to insult gay people, which is a slang term that British people use for a cigarette. Look that up. Okay, so I do think that there is some context that is needed when discussing some of this stuff. Like, what happened? He just coming out of nowhere and just making all these strange statements? What's going on with this guy? For context, I saw it mentioned that during this time, it was around the 8th anniversary of his brother's death. Remember his brother Randy that died in a sandstorm from an asthma attack? Maybe this plays a little bit into the beginnings of Etika's mental health decline. Next, I found some Reddit users discussing the matter when the news was still fresh about his terminated accounts. Here's what one user, Clegg's Art, stated 5 years ago. Seems to me like he was tripping on some sort of psychedelic drug and came to ego death, talking things about, I saw many things while I was stargazing. What I call stargazing. Is it called other things around the world? Native Americans. Ayahuasca? And obviously talking about the death of Etika or his past self and being reborn into some sort of new person. At the same time talking about meeting his deceased brother and how he hasn't really died. At the same time talking about the war on drugs. Everything negative you know about drugs is all a lie. All this seems to be similar stories or feelings that happen on an intense spiritual psychedelic trip. And that's the end of the quote. I don't think this is a bad theory, because it was known at the time that Etika posted questionable content on his channel for the sole purpose of trying to get banned. Why would somebody with the amount of stardom and wealth that he had reached want to cause his own financial and social demise? We can only speculate on what could have been going through his mind at the time, but being under the influence of psychedelics could be a reasonable cause. Let's dig a little deeper. I saw some of the posts that Etika had made during this time where his messages sounded very cryptic, a bit of reading between the lines required to grasp the meanings of some things that he was saying. He posted statements like, "It's my turn to die," and mentioning stargazing, encouraging others to do the same, and people who are familiar with the types of substances suspected of being used by Etika mentioned that stargazing is a term folks use to refer to being under the influence of psychedelic drugs. Ego death can happen as a common effect. And could this have been why he was referring to dying? Maybe it wasn't a literal sense of death. He went AWOL on social media following all this for about 3 days, which is a lot of time for somebody who basically lives and works online. During this time, Etika checked himself into a mental health facility, and after being examined, he was prescribed anxiety meds. When he returned to social media on Reddit, he apologized and explained that he posted the bad content on YouTube to protest the censorship and demonetization of edgy content and the politically correct policies that were affecting the creators online at the time. Etika, I understand where you're coming from on this. I'm struggling to find synonyms and acceptable terminology to describe a lot of the events in these horrific cases that I'm covering for my own content, and YouTube will not even give you a warning before they shut down monetization for the entire dang channel. No, not just one video, like the entire channel. It is a true mystery how we got to this point where we love to brag to foreigners that our country is all about liberty and justice for all and free speech, yada yada yada, until they decide that we must be censored. Sometimes you have to use the proper word to explain or describe something, like for example when I tried to explain the intricacies of how the N-word is used and perceived by black folks. Now if I was talking to a room full of people in real life, I could have just used those words that I was referring to, and because of the context I'm using the words in, there should have been no reason to be offended. I'm not using the words in a derogatory way. It would be like trying to look up a word in a dictionary, let's say prostitute for example, and you can't even see the entire word because all the letters are grayed out due to censorship. I'm not trying to become a prostitute. I'm not trying to like hire yo mama or like tell you should go do that. I'm just trying to figure out the meaning of the word. Like I can't even do that because the dictionary is censored now. That's like a ridiculous example, but I mean that's where it seems like things are leading these days. Our society is becoming emotionally weaker by the day. But still, posting sexually explicit content and protests is a bit over the edge in my opinion, mainly because children have easy access to this platform, YouTube in particular, and it was a clear violation of their policy, so how is that helping anybody, Etika? But we all can learn from his mistake. Now, in terms of the content that he did post, I believe they were like some kind of clips from maybe an anime or something, like some hentai kind of stuff. So it wasn't actual people that he was posting, but still, bro, relax. So after his huge channel is taken offline, young Etika created a brand new channel, and this one was launched in October of 2018. He called it Etika FRFX, and he promised his followers that he would be more himself by creating more sincere content. At first, it seemed like he was on the right track. People seemed to really love this guy. His channel was growing rapidly, but again, Etika posted the same sort of inappropriate content on the new account, and he got that channel banned. Ay, Etika, why you do that? You was winning, bruh. What happened? Then he went to Twitter and posted a bunch of statements relating to offing himself using a firearm, and this really alarmed people, rightfully so. One of his ex-girlfriends confirmed that she was actually with Etika when he was detained and sent to a hospital, and she explained to the public that there was a photo of Etika holding a firearm, and this picture was actually photoshopped, so like it was fake. But anyways, now we're heading into the end of April of 2019. It is the 29th of April. He posted a barrage of messages on Twitter where he went into these cryptic rants that were filled with racial slurs, homophobic statements, and so on. At this stage, his friends and fellow creators are trying to reach out to him because they're concerned, like, what's going on? Are you alright? But he blocked all of them. That same day, he ended up live streaming the cops confronting him after a worried fan notified the police about his wild and potentially dangerous tweets. Over 19,000 people were watching this live stream on Instagram when he was shouting from his apartment window that the revolution would not be televised. His stream lasted a good 40 minutes until finally the police took him to a hospital in an ambulance, basically against his will. A day after his fiasco, an internet news show called Drama Alert, hosted by Keemstar, interviewed Etika about all of this chaos affecting his image. In the interview, he talked about believing he was the Antichrist, and he said he wanted to purge all life. Keemstar asked him if he was having a legit mental breakdown, and if all of this was really just a huge publicity stunt. It could be viewed like these questions were coming from a place of doubt, like people are not taking his mental health issues seriously. However, we all know that it's not unheard of for people to use all sorts of tactics to bring shine to their presence online. And it's not totally an outlandish theory. I can understand why this line of questioning was taken. However, Etika informed the audience that he believed life was just a video game in which death means nothing, and that none of his behavior leading up to these incidents was part of a publicity stunt. Later, Keem will be heavily criticized by saying this next thing to Etika in response. Keemstar asked what the point of living was if life is truly just a video game. Why not just jump off a cliff? After all, if it's just a simulation, who cares? Those were his words. After this interview, Etika would find himself hauled away for assaulting a police officer, and he ended up in the mental institution once again. He came home on May 14th, and he claimed he only assaulted that officer in self-defense. He had gone back to making reaction videos on his first YouTube channel, which was still active at this time. Now, even though this may seem hard to believe to those of us with an ounce of common sense, at the time, mental health awareness was not where it is today. A lot of Etika's public ravings were seen as comical, and people did not seem to take it too seriously. People thought it was funny that he was having these meltdowns, and I did see how some Redditors had this air of casual dismissiveness in their attitudes as they discussed what was going on with Etika's channels. A lot of people were leaving clown emojis on his posts, on the videos where like they were showing him having these meltdowns. They were just making a big joke out of it. I don't think this is a simple concept. There are always layers to these things. It's important to point out that most gamers, at least in America, tend to be very young males. Gaming culture could be viewed as quite toxic if you're not familiar with how people interact in this world. There is not a whole lot of concern for people's emotions in this space. Gamers commonly rage while they're playing. They go on tirades cursing one another out, even if the person they're talking to is a complete and utter stranger. And the rules of normal society just don't really apply in an online community dedicated to escapists who play games to take them out of their usual daily stresses and rules. So the rules of engagement are a bit different. Just for an example, my daughter, who's 12 now, she's very into gaming, and she has been for the last few years, but there were times when she would be playing online and she would be verbally assaulted by the other players that were in that space with her. You know, she's a kid. They can't tell from her voice whether she's a girl or a boy, but I think because she's so into gaming, I think a lot of the other players just assumed that she was a boy. Her name is Jackson, so like, you know, you could be easily mistaking her for a boy. So the way that they would talk to her was very harsh, very degrading, and like mean, and she would come to me crying and say, oh, this guy called me this name, they're saying these mean things to me. And I had to tell her at that stage, listen, if you're gonna be gaming, you need to have an emotional barrier in place while you're playing and not take things seriously, even if people are like screaming and yelling at you, because that's the culture of gaming. And if you can't deal with that, you don't need to be in that space. They're not gonna change for you. So that's just something that I had to warn my daughter about. And then once she built up some emotional fortitude, then she was able to handle it. And now she gives it right back to them. You should hear how she sounds sometimes. I'll be like, who are you talking to like that? And she's like, oh, this dummy online. And I'm like, okay. whoa, relax, you know? But anyway, it just is what it is. So a young man with a mega successful career in gaming who seemingly has the world at his feet, having a mental breakdown in a public space could seem like a big joke to the audience. It should not be too surprising that the reaction is not that of sympathy and concern, but more of teasing and diminishing. You remember that old saying, boys will be boys. Again, people were not as educated back then on mental health struggles, personality disorders, neurodivergence, or anything related to abnormal psychology like we are these days. Especially, I think, for males, it's so much harder for them to publicly be recognized as having mental illnesses without all this negative stigma attached to it, because in general, men are not really allowed to suffer. They have to man up and just figure it out. You know, you can't complain to people about your problems. I didn't get diagnosed with autism until age 33, even though my symptoms were glaringly obvious to professionals when they met me. But when I was growing up and into my adulthood, women with autism were not widely studied or known about. Once upon a time, medical professionals actually believed that autism only affects men because their presentations were more obvious and commonly identified as strange or unusual, while many women naturally tend to learn how to mask our autistic traits earlier in life so we can just blend in and survive. I'm saying this to put into perspective that I don't think the public's reaction to Etika's struggles is a reflection of how evil the gaming community is in general. I think it says more about how ignorant they were about these particular matters back then. But even so, plenty of people did find his actions concerning enough that they tried to do something about it. And this is why I think there are repeated incidents of Etika being detained in mental hospitals and people trying to address the situation just the best way that they knew at the time. Instead of condemning and blaming the people around him for not seeing the warning signs or not handling it correctly, I think we should give them a little bit of leeway. A story like this might help somebody recognize similar signs in another person that they know as well. And if you're struggling with feelings like this that make you feel like you need to harm yourself or become extremely depressed, please know that you can reach out for help. You'd be surprised how sympathetic people can be when you open up to them. People you may never realize are a resource to you, like a teacher, a religious leader, a neighbor, or even an aunt that you haven't interacted with since childhood. Please do not suffer in silence or alone. Our inner demons are loudest in that condition. There are even anonymous methods of asking for help, so don't be ashamed to take advantage of those resources. Well, I wouldn't be making a video on this story if the outcome had been that Etika got the help he needed and turned his mental health around in the name of Jesus. So now we need to talk about the tragedy that this story is leading up to. Alright, so it's June 20th. 2019. The time is midnight. Etika's first channel, TR1 Iceman, releases its last video entitled, I'm Sorry. Hundreds of thousands of subscribers get notified, and when they click on the video, this is what they see. Young Etika wearing a white tee and a backpack, strolling through various New York City neighborhoods as he vlogs about what's been affecting him lately. He talked about his deteriorating mental health, about thoughts of wanting to harm himself, and the dark side of being an influencer or content creator with a huge following online. He sounded guilty about pushing away the people who were trying to help him, and this is another aspect of mental health issues that bugs me. Sometimes the people around you do all of the right things. They're concerned, they reach out, they offer their help, they really try to communicate and pull you out of their hole. But when the darkness takes over to a certain degree, you will find that the people who need this mental health intervention will often decline your help. So many reasons why they might do this, even though deep down they know they do need some help, but it does happen. And you may be able to lead the horsey to some water, but you definitely cannot force him to drink it. Is that how the saying goes? Listen, I grew up in South Korea when I learned English, so do not be quoting me on idioms. You know what I'm trying to say. Nonetheless, in his apology video, he also warns people about the detriments of becoming dependent on social media and not using it with caution and moderation. So here's a quote from that video. Let my story be one that advises caution on too much of the social media-ish, man. It can F you up. It can give you an image of what you want your life to be, and it can get blown completely out of proportion, dog. Unfortunately, it consumed me. It made me forget about consequences to my actions. It made me forget that we have to pay for the things that we say. It made me forget that there is weight behind words. I was so consumed with this great image that I had that I thought I was invulnerable to everything. I thought, oh, I'm destined for this. Nothing can stop me. Those are eerily relatable words for many of us, I think, and something that now in 2024 we can all learn from and apply to our own navigation of the internet and content creation. Only one day after this video was published, Etika, or as his family knew him, Desmond Daniel Amofa, was reported missing to the NYPD. People who found out about his disappearance were trying to contact him online. These were his fans and other creators who respected his work, and they felt they needed to let him know. A few days later, people discovered Etika's things that were left on the sidewalk on a walkway at the Manhattan Bridge. Remember, he had on that backpack in the final video? Well, inside they found his wallet, a laptop bag, a cell phone, a Nintendo Switch, and some extra clothing. It's now June 24th, 2019, only 4 days after his last video was uploaded, when someone saw a body floating near Pier 16 about a half-mile away from the spot where Etika's bag was found. The next morning, on June 25th, NYPD and EMS worked together to fetch the body. Not surprisingly, this was the body of young Desmond Amofa, who was reportedly already deceased when they found him. At only 29 years old, the medical examiner ruled his death an intentional drowning on the next day after the discovery. The aftermath of this event affected more than just Etika's family, as he was an influential character on the internet. YouTube was criticized for removing his last video for violating their policies, but YouTube insisted that this was a standard to remove any content that might promote self-harm. Internet users felt that social media platforms like YouTube were not taking these matters seriously enough and were mishandling the posts of people who may be at risk of mental illness and or thinking about ending their lives. You know, like maybe it's a cry for help. If you just remove their content because you think it's promoting self-harm, then how are these people's cries for help going to be answered, right? Yet, YouTube stated they make a point of providing these kinds of creators with resources to help with their thoughts of self-harm, specifically contact information for national hotlines which aid people in dealing with these issues. Quite a few well-known creators shared their condolences publicly after hearing the news about Etika's demise, including PewDiePie, James Charles, Fiona Nova. Social media users began to open dialogues on the dangers of mental health crises for creators. I found a quote by James Charles who stated, "I hope that the community finally realizes that creators are human beings with real valid feelings." This is a great point, not blaming the public for what Etika decided to do. However, I understand why James Charles made this statement. As a creator who has been on this platform for over a decade myself, I can assure you I've had firsthand experience dealing with weird people who seem to live online. Instead of spreading positivity and encouragement, a lot of these people will let their inner demons unleash themselves on innocent strangers who have the confidence to put ourselves out there as creators. Is it jealousy, resentment, narcissism, or just toxic personalities? The internet seems to be a comfort zone for rude people who get a kick out of being abusive. And as they say, hurt people hurt people. So we can only imagine what miserable lives these people must be living to find pleasure in disrespecting and verbally abusing folks who have never even met them in real life. It's all very strange to me. I think my autism makes me less sensitive to other people's judgments of me that aren't based in anything that's actually true. I kind of live in my own reality in my mind. So when people leave hate comments or stalk me online for the sake of annoying me, I tend not to take it that seriously and just move on. I have heard a lot of creators advise new creators to not engage with their audience when they get to a certain level. Like literally, they tell us to not even read the comment section for the sake of our mental health. Wow. Corey Kenshin is a very well-known gaming YouTuber who has grown his following to millions, and he's known for silently dropping off the internet every so often for an undisclosed amount of time and returning like nothing ever even happened. No explanations given. I believe he does this to recuperate mentally from the rabbit hole of toxicity that festers online, especially with the kind of following that he has. In a short rest in peace tribute video for Etika, Corey Kenshin warned his fellow content creators that social media is dangerous, as he put it. He advised that it's important to take care of your mental health first before you worry about your brand. He expressed that social media can make us pressured to constantly upload and engage with thousands of random people. And it can make you feel like if you don't constantly engage, you're just going to disappear into obscurity and become irrelevant. You know, every day you gotta make a post, you gotta upload, you gotta do something. He talked about how we all should strive to treat others kindly and with respect, Corey Kenshin explained his disgust for viewers who were spamming clown emojis under public displays of Etika's mental disparity. Yet, when Etika took his own life, Corey stated that some of these same viewers who spammed clown emojis were leaving RIP messages, meaning to say, as creators and influencers, it's really important not to put too much weight on how the public treats you or commentates on your life and your personality. He also commended his own viewers for leaving encouraging and understanding comments on his channel whenever Corey takes a break for his own sanity. I got put on to Corey Kenshin mainly from hearing him in the background in my own home when my kids play his content, and he's one of those few handful of creators who I encourage my kids to watch because of his overall disposition and his respectful personality. Although he is funny and goofy, he has a lot of wise words to impart on our youth, and I believe that it's good to support these creators who understand their own influence and use it in a positive manner. He had many sweet things to say about Etika, although he admitted not knowing him in person and that he had never met the young man. For this reason, I try to do my part by leaving only positive comments or personal speculations when I'm online. I never attack the creators directly, even if I really don't like them, because there's no point in doing that. As the old saying goes, if you have nothing nice to say, shut the hell up. That's the saying, right? English is my second language. Nonetheless, at the time of this incident, a lot of people did not take Etika's mental health struggles seriously. They even believed his last video to be some type of joke. Though, I don't see what was so humorous about it. A lot of fans and even other creators actually pointed the finger at Keemstar, stating it was his fault that the young man took his own life after reviewing the interview between the two where Keem asked why not jump off a cliff if life is just a simulation like a video game, and it doesn't matter anyway. These public allegations caused Keem to eventually lose his sponsorship with an energy drink brand. Now, truthfully, I don't think any one particular person is to blame for what happened. I don't even think Keem played much of a role in all of this. I think Keem was likely being sarcastic when he made the statements that he made, and he later confessed that he didn't suspect that Etika had any real mental health problems because of private conversations that they had. Not to mention, if mental health and psychology is not much on your general radar, you may not recognize the signs in somebody who you don't regularly interact with. So I don't think that it was right for people to blame Keem, but I do hope that he and others who experienced this case firsthand were able to learn something from it. It's all about educating ourselves. Once upon a time, I knew nothing about autism and neurological disorders until a nephew of mine was diagnosed with that. Trying to learn more about my nephew's condition opened up a world of research that eventually led me to my own diagnosis as well as my son's. And both myself and my daughter have ADHD, which affects the way that we process information and learn. Once you're armed with knowledge, it makes life struggles much easier to deal with. Knowing my daughter has a specific learning style helped me to make the much needed decision to pull her out of public schools in our local area with a very abysmal special education program. Now that she is enrolled in school online, she can learn at her own pace and she doesn't dread attending school every day. Her mental health is a lot better, and I also have more time to show her other skills like household management, which she's going to need to know one day when it's her own turn to run the house. I think if there is any good we can pinpoint as a result of Etika's death, it is that discussions were opened which focused on how people often perceive content creators as people who are somehow immune to harsh comments from people online due to their status as public figures. Many creators and fans posted tributes to celebrate the life and success of Etika. He is considered one of the best internet entertainers in video game history. And something else that Corey Kenshin said in his tribute video that stuck with me was sometimes when people get to this very low point in their life, they might feel like the world is better off without them in it. And Corey was saying that that's not true and that the world is missing something special when you're not in it. And I absolutely agree with him. I think a lot of times when people get to this point mentally, they're not thinking clearly, so they just don't understand how much of a loss it would be to their community to lose them in this way. But if you're hearing this message right now and you're in this state of mind yourself, I hope this resonates with you. The world is not going to be better because you're gone. Someone needs you. Someone is going to, even if it's not right now, sometime in your future, there will be somebody in your life that will be grateful that you're in it. So don't let that be a reason for you to check out. Days after Etika left this world, his fans set up a memorial for him on the walkway of the Manhattan Bridge where his bag had been found. As for the gaming community, there was a Super Smash Bros. Tournament put together to pay tribute to Etika, and although he was gone, at the 2019 Super Smash Con, Etika was honored with the 3rd annual Smashies Award for Best Reaction category, and I'm sure it was well well deserved. There were also mental health charities created in memory of Etika. Raising money for charity led to other artists and internet stars working together to put up a 40-foot mural in November of 2019 to celebrate Etika's life and raise mental health awareness in the public. In 2020, this mural was added to the Pokemon Go game as a virtual Pokestop location. How cool is that though? My heart breaks for the family of Etika, who lost another son much too soon. I'm not going to say it was before his time because I do believe in God and I know that he gives and takes away all life. Nothing happens without the permission of the ultimate creator. There's always something we can learn from studying the lives of others. And in this case, my biggest takeaway is that when you're feeling down and hopeless, remember Etika. After he was gone, so many people and community members expressed their concern and love for him through good deeds and positive messages. I hope this is a reminder for all of us that when our inner demons whisper to us that we should just give up and stop hoping for the better, there is somebody out there who cares for us, and we just need to make it another day to reach that point in our futures when we'll run into the right people and they're going to find their way to us and bring along their inner lights to shine warmly on us. I can only speak for myself here, but I've had numerous struggles over the years dealing with these kinds of feelings that Etika was overwhelmed by and eventually succumbed to. Many times I've thought about just giving up. When I think of my 2 children and the devastation they would feel from losing me before they were ready to say goodbye, I rethink those ideations. I know how miserable I still am every day missing my father, who died of a drug overdose when he was only 36 years old. And I can't imagine my kids having the mixed emotions and sleepless nights that I've suffered over the years, wondering how much better my life might have turned out if my dad hadn't given up on himself and just had hung in there. Let's all work together to spread positivity in the world, wherever that is, starting in our own households and going as far as to reach strangers on the internet. You never know what's behind a public smiling face, how trapped somebody might be feeling despite seeming as though they have it all. Life is scary for a lot of us, and we're all just trying to figure it out as we go. Leave me a comment below. Let's open up our own dialogue about mental health, how it might affect creators in public spaces, as well as average people who spend more and more time in virtual reality these days. Also, do you remember being a part of this case? Were you a fan of Etika's while all of this was going on? Have you heard about this case before? I invite you to join me in a game I play with myself when I hear significant dates in these kinds of stories. I like to reflect on what I was up to at that point in history. What were you doing around June 20th of 2019? This one is so hard for me. I'm so bad with timelines. I think I had just turned 34 earlier in the month, and I had been working at a new job running a restaurant. I think I might have very recently gotten promoted, or maybe even trained to get a promotion. I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a coastal town that borders Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. My house at the time was a huge double-wide mobile home on some country land, having a hot summer, running the AC all day and enjoying the beach bum lifestyle. Damn, that house was like a little private resort. I loved it there and still miss it all the time. That was just a few months before I unexpectedly ended up here in Washington State to move closer to my Korean side of the family. So I had recently gotten diagnosed with autism, so I was still learning about my autism and what it means and how it works and how my brain works. Now, it's your turn to share your memories with us in the comment section. I appreciate your attention span, fam. Yours is better than mine. Leave me a like, and I hope you risk the subscription to my currently developing channel. I cannot get there without your help, so please visit me again soon. They call me Gypsy Kim, and until next time, I'm just gonna leave you with the words that the young, handsome Etika used to end his videos. Take care of yourselves, and of course, as usual, please have yourself a damn good one.